And now, PMDB reviews WrestleMania X7. First match of the night was William Regal defending his Intercontinental Championship against Chris Jericho. Now, they didn't get enough time in this match to give it a 4-star, 5-star classic, but it was a pretty decent start to the show. I'd award this match 3.5 stars out of 4. No, actually, that's maybe a bit too generous. 3 stars out of 5. Next up was a throwaway match, the second match of the night, pitting the Right to Censor, which consisted of Bull Buchanan, The Good Fowler, and Val Venus, taking on the team of Taz and the APA, which consisted of Bradshaw and Farouk. It was a fun match, just a throwaway match, but fun. 2 stars out of 5. The third match of the night was one of the highlights of the night, a fun hardcore match for the Hardcore Championship. Raven put his title on the line against the Big Show and Kane, which was a lot of fun spots in this match. The only thing that really bothered me about the match was the ending when Kane jumped off the stage into either the Big Show or Raven. It's not very clear, but he clearly missed by a mile. That's what's clear. 3.5 stars out of 5. Next was the only match of the night where I felt a bit bored with. I don't think guys in this match, Test and Eddie Guerrero, got enough time to deliver, and I don't think they had good chemistry together. And Eddie Guerrero, phenomenal performer. Test I liked as well, but I didn't think this match for the European Championship was all that great. I can only give it 1.5 stars out of 5. Now on to arguably the most overrated match in wrestling history, Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 17. I'm sorry, they didn't get enough time to give this a 4-star, 5-star match feel. It was still pretty solid. It had some great spots, excellent wrestling. But further down the line in 2001, their matches, specifically the one on Raw in the steel cage, was much, much better. Now that was wrestling at its best. This one, not so much. I'd give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Now on to the Women's Championship match. Ivory putting her title on the line against China. Now China won't appear again at WrestleMania ever, which is totally ridiculous considering how big a star she was in the Attitude Era. But here she is looking dominant against Ivory in what is just a job match really, but it made China look like the dominant female she was. Next up was Vince versus Shane, which was one of the highlights of WrestleMania 17, and I'll be saying that a lot on this point. This is where the show really started to ramp it up. It featured Mick Foley as a special guest referee who took a sick chair shot in this match, but Shane and Vince really stealed the show during this match. I had everything apart from sound technical wrestling, but it didn't matter. It had, the drama was there, the suspense was there, some unbelievable spots were in it. Definitely a 4 stars out of 5 match for me. It was one of the highlights of the greatest WrestleMania of all time. As I mentioned in the last match, this is where the event really started to pick up and got really, really good. Next up was TLC 2 featuring the Dudleys versus Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys. And it was a stunt show, but it was a very well done stunt show that featured run-ins from Lita, Spike Dudley, and Rhino. Jeff Hardy probably, was the performer of this particular match. He took a sick swanton bomb off the top of a very large ladder, crushing Spike. He barely touched Rhino, but Spike, good God, I think he actually lost a tooth during that spot. And then there was one of the WrestleMania highlights of all time when Edge speared Jeff Hardy. He was clinging on to the tag team belts and Edge jumped off one of the ladders, speared him, and there was an insane bump in an insane match. Great commentary throughout this match and throughout the show from Paul Heyman and good old JR. You sometimes forget about this combination, but they were one of the best duels on the together commentary. They really, had great chemistry together, bouncing off each other. 4 stars. No, actually, I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars out of 5. Now, you could say this match felt a bit out of place at Attitude Era WrestleMania, but I was one of the fans watching that started getting into wrestling during the end of the golden age of wrestling, and I enjoyed this, seeing Earthquake again, and the Iron Sheik, and Doink the Clown, whoever was performing in during the time. It wasn't Matt Bourne who was the best Doink the Clown, but Doink was there anyways. Jim Cornette came down, and a host of talents from the golden age and the new generation, all their gimmicks. The only disappointment I had was with the one-man gang. I would have preferred Akeem the African Dream just to hear Jai Soul Bro at WrestleMania 17. Now that would have sent WrestleMania 17 into fucking orbit as the definitive wrestling show of all time, had that happened. The Iron Sheik won the Battle Royal, last eliminating Hillbilly Jim, I think, or Sergeant Slaughter, one of the two. Now Iron Sheik won because he couldn't take a bump over the top ropes. Now, commentating the event was Mean Gene Okerlund and the late great Bobby the Brain Heenan, fantastic as usual. And he had one of the quotes of the night. He was saying during the Iron Sheik's entrance, it'll be WrestleMania 38 by the time the Iron Sheik gets here. Scary thing is, this is WrestleMania 17, which took place 17 years ago this year, and we are creeping towards WrestleMania 38. God, what a wrestling show this was. It really was. Out comes Triple H for his match against The Undertaker. The Undertaker is 8-0 at this point, and Triple H is attempting to break the streak. Now, watching this match live, I love the badass entrance Triple H got from Motorhead. They sang his entrance theme, the game, Time to Play the Game, or whatever it's called. And I really thought at one point Triple H was going to end the streak, especially during that sledgehammer spot where The Undertaker was going to nail him with the last ride, and Triple H nailed him with a sledgehammer. I'm like, fuck. They're going to throw away a potential great storyline with this undefeated streak here. But no, The Undertaker kicked out, and I was like, I remember watching it live going, yeah! Oh, to be 14 years old again, or how old was I? Actually, I was 13 years old back then, watching it live on Sky Sports 1. To be obsessed with wrestling like that again, I told Austin Mark, no worries in life whatsoever. Good times. But yeah, Triple H was defeated by The Undertaker with a last ride in a fairly entertaining match. I'd give it, 4 stars out of 5 from me. Now on to arguably the greatest professional wrestling match I've ever seen in my life. This was the first WrestleMania I actually watched live. I'd been a fan nearly 10 years up till that point, but this was the first one I watched live, and it featured my favourite wrestler of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin, going against his biggest rival of all time in wrestling terms. Arguably his greatest feud was with Vince McMahon, but wrestler-wise, the chemistry he had with The Rock was unbelievable, and this match was the best Rock Austin match ever. They brought everything to the table, literally. It had drama, suspense, great wrestling, it had electricity. The build-up to this match was unbelievable throughout, building up to the match, and then throughout the show, great atmosphere, 2 larger-than-life wrestling characters going at it. It had it all. The only thing I didn't like was the booking of the heel turn afterwards, but the match itself was absolutely excellent. I loved the end spot with Austin, nailing The Rock with a chair several times. Like, that was the only way he could beat him, was siding with Vince McMahon, whom he hated, and using a steel chair. But it was great storytelling, seeing Austin, he didn't give up on the sharpshooter as he needed to win that WWF Championship one more time. The Rock, you could never stop The Rock either, and he, at this time, in kayfabe-wise, was just better than Austin, and Austin knew it, and he'd done everything in his power to win, and he did, and I loved it. I was an Austin Mark at the time, huge Austin Mark, and it was a bittersweet moment, I must be honest. At times, like, yeah, I'm glad Austin's won the title, but what's this shit with Vince McMahon going on? And it really was like the end. It was the end of that Austin babyface original run and the end of the Attitude Era, really. But what an ending. Dave Meltzer, he hands out 6 stars to all these matches in New Japan Wrestling, which I've seen one, and I didn't think they were that great. So I must be missing what's great about wrestling today, but to me, if there ever was a 6-star match, this is it. Stone Cold Steve Austin in his prime peak against The Rock in his prime peak. It does not get much better. WrestleMania 17 is the greatest, the granddaddy of them all, the greatest WrestleMania, the greatest wrestling event I've ever seen, ever. And I don't think it'll ever be beat.